All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, December 7th. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Belbin, could you read our community prayer?
Yes, sir. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially we lift our prayers to the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Belbin. All right. Next up this morning is, this evening is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Seeing none. We'll move to our next agenda item, discussion and possible vote on proposed changes to inspection fees.
Would you like to?
Paul? Would you like to?
Yeah, the information's in your packet that Paul has prepared for you.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to have a seat at the microphone? How are you tonight?
Good, yourself?
Good, thank you.
So what I'd like to do, or I'm proposing, is the original building fees for residential and commercial. The way they're presented, they're a little confusing. The formula's a little bit on the lengthy side. So I came up with some new fees and new schedule, which you guys have in front of you. The fees themselves haven't changed much as far as increasing. There's maybe one or two new ones on the commercial side for the fire alarm and the sprinkler, but they're pretty much the same as what you had.
Okay. All right. Questions from the board?
Thank you very much, if I could, Mr. Chairman. On one of these, it said under towers.
What, are you on residential, commercial?
Commercial.
Yep.
It said per, I'm trying to find it again.
Right, if you go to the original, you got towers, monopoles, and antennas.
Right. I saw something that said it was per item on it. Did that mean
On the new or the old?
on the old? Was that, does it continue each like antenna? Is that the added cost? Was that it, or?
I don't, on the existing schedule, is towers, monopoles, and antennas, 600 per tower. Additional carriers, 100 each. Additional panels, I don't really know what you're trying to get at.
Well, I was just wondering, if it's each antenna?
Yes.
Is that a different fee for each
No,
antenna that you put up?
let's just say if you have a company coming in, they're gonna replace an antenna, it's per antenna you're getting
Okay.
charged for.
Okay,
Same
that's
thing
what I
with the
want.
new,
Yeah.
it's per antenna.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Well, I guess not for now, but I had a discussion with the previous interim building inspector, and in our conversation, he said that our fees for the solar arrays and battery systems were extremely low. He really was quite adamant about it. So I don't know, I'm not prepared to propose anything tonight, but I would love to look into,
On the commercial side of it?
yes,
On the commercial
to
side?
increasing that, because he was confident that the town could and should be asking more, based on his experience and thoughts on other towns. So again, I'm not prepared for anything tonight, but it's worth looking into.
Well, I mean, you can address the proposal tonight and then make that an agenda item in the future.
Right.
After you do a little homework on that.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Boucher, since you are our full-time building commissioner with a lot of experience, would you please tell us what you think of the fees for solar?
The commercial fees for solar, I really haven't gave that much thought. I mean, I could research other towns if you'd like to see what they're getting for solar. Previous towns I've worked on a residential side, the fees are pretty much in line. The commercial, like I said, I'd have to look into them.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just wondering.
That's why I kept all the fees pretty much the same. I was just trying to change the format, so it's much easier for myself and the staff to come up with a building permit
Yeah,
fee.
no, that's pretty clear that you were doing that, yeah. Thank you.
Could you maybe look into
Yeah, I can look
it and reach
into
out, and I will try to too, and again, Mr. Bando was very, very clear that he believes the town could be charging more. So,
Mr. Boucher, if you could look into that when you have an opportunity, and we can
Great.
follow up at
Yep.
a future meeting.
thanks.
All right. Is there a motion
I'll make a motion, we approve the fees.
and a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to say thank you very much, and
Thank you.
again, officially welcome to Carver, and you're doing a great job so far. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
You as well.
Right, Paul.
All right. Next up is the request for appointment to the Recreation Committee, Stephanie Waters. Is Stephanie with us? Ms. Waters, if you'd like to step up to the microphone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We appreciate you volunteering for the town. Does anyone have anything for Ms. Waters?
Thank you very much for stepping up to the plate. We really appreciate it, all right? Guiding our town is an important thing to do, so thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you for the thoughtful application. It sounds like you will be an amazing fit on that committee.
Thank you very much.
I agree. Anyone else?
Do you have anything further you'd like us to know?
No, just happy to be here and happy to help.
Thank you.
Well, we truly appreciate you stepping up to volunteer your time for the town.
I'll make a motion, we approve Stephanie Waters to the Recreation Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
we appreciate it.
All right. Next up is an application for Changeup manager for the Carver EEN Beverages LLC, DBA Carver Spirits. Sir, if you'd like to step up. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing here.
I am here, it's like we're gonna change the management and the Carver liquor store, beer and wine, and I will be fully responsible for that location.
I'm sorry, sir, could you speak into the microphone?
please?
Oh.
Pull it close.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Now I can, yes.
Yes, I will be the new management team for that location,
And where is that location?
the Carver. I'm gonna see that tomorrow. I am new. I'll take it over tomorrow, so I'll see that with the district manager and the director to see the area tomorrow.
Okay, this is the 133 North Main Street location, correct?
Yes.
Questions from the board?
Did it change ownership also? Or is it still in the same ownership? and
It's
you're
still the
just
same
meeting-
ownership, nothing has
Same.
changed, just the management.
Anyone else? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the change of management.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a nice holiday season.
You too.
Thank you. You too. All right. Moving right along. Next up is an discussion and possible vote on the town administrator bylaw. Ms. Bogart, I think you requested this.
Well, yeah, I just wanted us to bring it up because we had worked on it in the spring.
Okay.
And it didn't make it to town meeting. So I just wanted us to finish what we had started.
All right.
So I didn't see that we got a draft of what we had worked on in the spring, so I don't know if the conversation needs to go.
Well, I think Ms. Weston sent out a request for any changes that anybody wanted to the town administrator bylaw, and the only change I saw was some suggestions from Mr. Belvin.
Well, we had extensive conversation in the spring, like she sent out some minutes from March and stuff, so we had discussed it, so I didn't know if those were all compiled into a draft for the spring or not, but we
I
can.
don't-
I have
talk
that
about it now.
original.
Okay.
Presumably, everybody had it at one point.
Yeah, I was under the impression we were looking for new changes to this, so all I have are the changes that Bob sent in. Do we want to, well, why don't we talk about Mr. Belvin's changes, and we can go through it. 'Cause I know you sent a number of things to the board,
Yeah.
Bob.
If I could. So the first one there highlighted in red here is for this is a new category. If there is a vacancy in the position of the town administrator, the select board of the town of Carver shall appoint an interim town administrator to serve as, I didn't put town the right way. Town administrator is approved, provided, however, the appointment shall not be longer than 8 months. And that just, there were some concerns about how long the interim town administrator should be, and I picked 8 months, and if you guys want to take it one piece by piece like that.
I think that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions, or, I'm sorry, I'm taking your job away.
No. Anyone have any thoughts on that particular?
Yes, I do. So what is the reason for picking 8 months?
It's not a year, it's not 6 months, okay? So 8 months is a good opportunity for you to get a screening committee together, find someone else to get in there before. So hopefully you're looking, if we're given 90 days or 60 days notice of the town administrator leaving, then we can now turn around and get a screening committee together, get someone in here, and it allows the screening committee up to 8 months to really do their job and give it to us so we can do our job. So, I mean, we can make it shorter.
No, I think it should be longer, but
Well, okay.
My question would be, what happens if at the end of the 8 months, there's not someone in place? Can a new contract appointment be done for 8 months?
We can add that on there if you want. I mean, I'm open. I mean, I figured there was a lot of issues with us having a longer term of as town administrator as an interim. So I figured, let's put this into our bylaw so that we have some guidance.
Well, I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I guess that was my thought as well. What happens if you get 6 or 7 months into this thing and you realize you need more time, and you have somebody here that you're happy with? Can that person be reappointed? Or?
Do you want to add that on? I'll be happy to, like I said, this is just my thought process. This is a discussion amongst all of us that we can all have our points of view.
I mean,
And I'm willing to make any changes the board wants to make.
I think we shouldn't limit ourselves. I think we need that flexibility.
yeah, and that's my thought as well. I mean, I understand the thought process behind it, because I heard some of those same thoughts that I'm sure you heard. But I'm reluctant to bind future boards, because we just don't know what the circumstances are going to be when that appointment takes place. I think when the board appointed Mr. LaFond, I've said this in the past, that we had a very unique circumstance. We were heading into a pandemic that nobody knew where it was going to go, and I would have felt pretty uncomfortable with a short-term appointment. So I understand the thought process, but I would like to leave future boards, I would like to give them the flexibility to do what they feel they need to do. That's just my thought, so.
Okay. So is it the perception of the board, with not even taking a vote, is that we don't act on this language that I put, so there's no limitations, or there should be some type of limitations, because, I mean, in the future, what if another board comes in here and says, we're going to hire an interim for 3 years?
Well, I think that's up to that board. I mean, your next line talks about the subcommittee of the select board will negotiate the terms of the contract. So the terms of the contract, the next term of the contract could be 6 months, or it could be a year. But I think we really should respect this board and future boards. Let them negotiate that.
All right, I disagree. I think we should have a limitation of timeframe, whether it's, as I put, 8 months here, 6 months, or a year, that there is a clear guidance to say, here, we really, because that's what it is. It's a guidance of our town people to say, hey, an interim doesn't last forever, okay? And leaving it open, it just, the opportunity to have somebody in here and say, well, it's an interim, but it's going to be for 2-3 years or whatever, and really, that's not an interim position. Interim's just to cover you until you have the opportunity to serve a screening committee.
But you
And-
say just prior to that, Mr. Belvin, the select board of the town of Carver shall appoint an interim town administrator to serve until a town administrator is approved.
Correct.
So I think we should let the board decide, because as has been pointed out, what if it takes them a long time to find one that, as a permanent?
Okay. Would you have a cutoff time at all,
No.
Sarah?
No, I
No
would not.
cutoff.
I would get rid
Okay.
of that last provided however clause.
Mark, you too? You don't want a time frame at all?
I'm not, I understand the thought process behind a time period on an interim, but I'm reluctant to have this board bind future boards. I think that those boards are elected for a reason, and they should be able to do what they think is the appropriate thing to do at the time they do it.
I don't know, I think if a reappointment is possible at the end of 8 months, that's not telling a future board that they can't take more time to find someone. Because honestly, who considers a 3-year contract an interim thing if we're going to be discussing issuing a permanent town administrator, potentially a 3 or 5 year contract? That's just 3 years. I don't think it's unreasonable to limit the appointment, knowing that it can be renewed. It gives the board and the town opportunity to take the time they need to find a town administrator, but takes away the opportunity or the chance that the interim role is being looked at as a permanent position.
But that doesn't make any sense to me, because what if a board decides whichever interim they have there is the one they want as a permanent?
Then go ahead and hire them through the process. But if you have it's going to be awkward, but right now we are in a situation where we have an interim town administrator and we're trying to hire a permanent one. And the fact that an interim was interested in the job, we were told it affected the potential application. So if we issue another long-term interim contract, I could see that happening again.
But that could happen no matter what length of contract we hire an interim for, whether it's 5 months, 10 months, or 2 years. They could still be interested in the permanent job. So the length of time you hire the interim doesn't affect whether they're interested in the permanent position or not.
Yeah, but if it's a shorter time, it kind of puts it on you. It's the optics too. I just don't think a 2-year interim contract comes across as interim.
Oh, okay.
So I like the idea of shortening it. I agree with Bob.
All right, so we'll just hold off on that one then?
Yeah, I would say, why don't we take a vote? And
Well, Jim isn't here, so, I mean, I'd like him to weigh in on this, but
okay,
it's
I'll
fine.
give him
I
no,
mean,
that's fine. I'll give him an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, I figured this is a good time to discuss it and talk about it.
I'll give him an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't
All
we
right.
discuss the next,
Okay.
the changes under 3311?
Yeah. what I wrote is, the Select Board may appoint an interim town administrator if the need arises. A subcommittee of the Select Board will negotiate terms of a contract and voted on by the Select Board. The Select Board shall appoint a full-time town administrator from a list prepared by a screening committee. And then under the screening committee, membership is, must have 9 members, all town residents, no town employees or family members of town employees. The Select Board appoints 6 residents from Carver, 1 being a business owner, 1 member appointed by the planning, conservation, and school. So, and that makes 10 for some reason. I didn't count right.
Okay, so I have a couple of comments on that, if I
Yep.
may. In the second sentence, a subcommittee of the Select Board will negotiate terms of the contract
Yep.
and voted on, should be to be voted on.
Yeah.
Under the screening committee, I think it's imperative that we have, no matter what, two members, 2 officers from the public safety departments, and they are town employees. But I think it's important for no family members, because we ran up against a couple of issues this time. But I don't think you should exclude those 2 employees, whoever those people may be.
Okay. You want to put that on there, too?
Yeah, I
wanna
just
add
want you,
that?
yeah, just cut no town employees and put no family members of town employees. And on your 4th point, I also think it's imperative to have a member of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is the committee, really, that deals with the town administrator, the budget, all the finances of all these other departments. I wouldn't leave it out at all. I think it's really important.
And I guess just speaking for myself, I think, again, I understand your thought here, but I would like to let future boards who are looking for a town administrator, put their own screening committee together. I don't want to specify who a board 6, 9, 12 years from now has to put on a screening committee. So
Actually, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I understand we set up our own screening committee based on what we thought was best, and I want to give future boards the opportunity to do what they think is best. So
That's a very good point.
that's just my thoughts. Okay. Ms. Bogart, would you like to weigh in on this one?
When we were forming the committee, we didn't know what we were getting into, and I had researched a lot of other towns, and we had discussion on what it should be. So I'm not against the idea of setting parameters for the committee, and I think including the Finance Committee makes sense. So I'm not against this, and I don't look at it as tying future boards. I look at it as having consistency. Coming into this, it was, well, there's no rules for the screening committee, so do whatever. This would give guidance, so the board would know what to expect, the public would know what to expect. Everyone knows what the screening committee means, that this is what a screening committee is, instead of, who knows what that board's gonna do. So I like the officialness of it. Other boards and committees have regulations and membership as you go through the bylaws. I don't see why this one shouldn't, for consistency's sake. So they know, okay, if it happens again, this is what it's gonna be. Not who knows how many people that board will want and where they'll want them from.
All right. Well, I think this is another thing. Why don't we let these, we'll discuss the changes, but we'll leave them for a full board to vote on.
Thank you.
And the next item,
It says the select board shall appoint the town administrator to serve for, I took out an indefinite term. I put in 3 years. I know we've talked about 3 years or 5 years or whatever. And shall fix compensation for such person. I took out annually within the amount appropriated by the town. At no time shall the town administrator contract be more than 3 years. I know we've discussed that. I just put this as mine, but we can turn around, that can be changed, open to anything. And salaries shall not be renegotiated yearly. So I know that was an issue with, it kept on, I know before I became a selectman, it kept on year after year after year. It kept on getting renegotiated. It's like, what's the sense of a contract when you have a contract in these 4 pages here, all right, the 4 corners here, when, guess what? Really doesn't matter, because we're just going to renegotiate again every year. So that was my point for that.
And I think I remember this discussion from last time we discussed this, and I remember, I think I made the suggestion, I think the board was pretty much in agreement, however, I could be wrong, that I think I changed that. I feel uncomfortable telling a board that the term of the contract will be 3 years. Just, that's what it is, no more, no less.
And actually, in the last year, when we discussed it, I have 5-0 written at the top.
I think I
we
had
voted on it.
suggested at one time that we change that language to be up to 5 years. I
Yeah,
think that-
it says at
And
no
I'm just
time
like-
shall a
Yeah.
contract be more than 5 years. And
Yeah.
I remember, too, because I remember arguing, the town needs some stability, you know? And I think, and the employees need stability, and, you know, we all have 3-year terms. I mean, this is going to be a moving picture all the time if you're doing this every 3 years. But, having said that, so I would like to see 5 years there, no more than 5.
Okay.
But I totally agree with the salary shall not be renegotiated every year.
Yeah. So I have no problem with the 5 years. I just, like I said, I put this in as my comments about this for us to discuss. So I don't have a problem with that. The next one
Wait,
is.
can I just
I'm
jump
sorry,
in?
I
Absolutely.
apologize.
No, it's all good. The no more than 5 is great. The no negotiating the salary, should that change or add that the terms of the contract will not be renegotiated, until the last year? I remember we discussed that. It wasn't just the salary that we had discussed not changing every year, but not extending the contract every year, not starting a brand new one. And I think it was you worded
Yeah.
it really well
Yeah, I think
back
you're right.
then.
Yeah, thank you.
I forget what you said, but it was the contract
Well,
won't be,
Yeah, it was more than, that's correct, it was more than just the salary, it was lots of terms
Yeah.
that changed every year.
don't talk about a new contract till you're in the last year of the current one, which,
So maybe it should say the salary and terms of the contract?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and again, we'll hold off on any votes until
Yeah,
Mr.
no, that's
Hoffman
fine.
joins us.
The next one was, the town administrator shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elected or appointed, nor engage in any business or occupation during such service. Volunteering outside of Carver is exempt, okay, and I struck out unless such action is approved in advance by the Board of Selectmen. I struck that out.
And that phrase, unless such action is approved in advance by the Board of Selectmen, was engaging in a business or occupation outside of the office.
Correct.
I agree.
did the unless it just refer to business or occupation? It's not going so far as saying whoever's the town administrator can't be on like the recreation committee in their hometown? Was it going that far?
Well,
That
That's
they-
volunteering.
That's volunteering.
Okay.
Volunteering is exempt. They can
Even
volunteer.
if you're on a committee in another town that gets a stipend, is that
That's
out
not
too?
your, it's not your business or occupation.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I would hate to preclude town administrators from,
No, they just couldn't be on they couldn't be on the school committee in another that would be elected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but because this said elected or appointed.
It does.
And they don't have time, trust me.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we get to your new item
All
on
right,
the last
so
page.
this is the new one on the back page. It says, during the term of office for the town administrator, the select board will be sole governing authority of any conflict, which is any issue that shows a potential appearance of conflict arises related to the duties of the town administrator. The select board shall have all powers to investigate any allegation of misconduct involving employees, elected officials, and appointed officials. The select board should have the final decision on any issue of discipline, demotion, removal, or termination of employees and appointed officials when a conflict arises between employees and appointed officials and the town administrator. Elected officials cannot be disciplined, demoted, or removed by the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chair?
What's yours?
Okay, so I have a huge problem with this, Mr. Belbin, because what this does is reverts us to the day back in the early 90s and before, when the Select Board ran things here, where it was backroom deals, it was politics, it was favors, it was who you knew. The reason we passed a bylaw in the first place to create the role of town administrator was to get rid of that. I don't think, I mean, and the town meeting supported that wholeheartedly. I certainly don't think of select board members as kings and queens, and I don't think we should be meddling in the day-to-day affairs of what goes on in our town offices. That's why we hired a person to be a town administrator. Our job, we're policymakers. We're not here to penalize people or reward people or whatever. And I don't know how many people realize how important that was. That was a huge step forward. It took us out of the days, as I said, backroom deals, favoritism, who you knew. I, for one, don't want to return to that day. So I would strike this whole clause.
And speaking, again, I think, the Select Board, we're a political board, or we're elected, and I think the reason we went with the town administrator in the first place was to make this whole process a little less political, to bring someone unbiased to the process. And I think this brings politics back into the process. I would be against this as well. And Ms. Bogart, I want to give you a chance to comment.
I think I see some intent in this, and I think there's some merit to some of it, but the way that it's written, I do think it's kind of too big. But I think I know where you're coming from, and I wish there was a different way to accomplish it, but as written, it seems a little overarching.
Can I respond? All right. So, we as a Board of Selectmen, we also, if unions have issues and they come up, we have to make decisions on approving the discipline or not of employees when they come before us, if they're going through the grievance process and it comes before us. All right, so.
That's correct, but it's a multi-stage. I mean, we're the last stage of that.
Correct, that's right.
And Rick will help us with how many stages there are, but I mean, it goes.
Depends on the contract.
And it depends on the contract. Just because we can do that doesn't mean we should be able to do this on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
That's a completely different scenario.
Mr. Chairman. So, Sarah, you're wrong. All right, this is limited in the scope of if it's a conflict. If there's a conflict between the town administrator and an employee, or a town administrator and an official, or something like that, if there's a conflict, then what else is going to happen? So we need to have some outlet that the Board of Selectmen can act upon this and be able to either mediate it in some way, shape, or form, but to investigate it, to turn around and have that ability that if there is a conflict, then we can act, all right? Because if there isn't, then we're kind of stuck. So that's where this is drawn out from, is that we can go ahead and it gives us that ability, all right, that if a decision is made or a decision is not made, that we can go ahead and formally investigate. We can turn around, and if we feel there's a conflict, then we can act upon that. It gives us that ability, and it allows us that ability to do that. We can do that in other cases, that we can overrule the town administrator on appointments. So this is kind of similar in that sense, to say, hey, all right, we do have some overreaching powers amongst the town administrator. ability to do his job. All right, and if there's a conflict, and that's where, we're not doing the day-to-day operations of running the town. It's really limited to just conflicts.
Actually, it says, what you have proposed is the Select Board shall have the final decision on any issue of discipline, demotion, removal, or termination of an employee when a conflict arises, et cetera. Who decides what's a conflict? You?
Okay? It's the board. If one of this Board of Selectmen feels that there is an issue, all right, then we bring it amongst the board and we discuss it. And 99.99% of the time, probably in executive session. All right, and if we, as a board, determine that there is one or there isn't, okay, it's like me. I mean, I come up and say, okay, here we go. I want to discuss this issue, all right? Now, some things we discuss here and some things we don't. But what we do is we need to discuss them. Okay? And if one person has an issue, then we really should discuss that issue. All right? And if the board doesn't feel that there's an issue amongst that, then so be it. All right? But if there is a quorum of the board that agrees that something should be done, then a quorum of the board should be able to bring that forward. But without language that says that we have that ability to do that in our bylaw, okay, we can't. And that's the issue. And I understand your point about governing day-to-day the way it used to be. Totally understand that. But we're talking about a very limited scope here. We're not talking the day-to-day operations of everything. It's a very limited scope on this issue.
No. I disagree, Mr. Belvin.
And
I think it's a very dangerous clause.
And I would hope that if you have an alternative suggestion, I'm open to suggestions.
All right, well, we'll have some chance to read this over, and we'll come back again when Mr. Hoffman joins us, and
Okay.
and we'll take some
Solving a problem we don't have.
votes on this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Did anyone else have any suggestions they wanted to make to the town administrator bylaw?
Oh, a basic one. Every time it says Board of Selectmen, we should change it to Select Board.
And I think that, without us even voting on it, I think that's something that should happen throughout our bylaws.
Yes.
That was already voted on at the town meeting.
I believe so, yeah. I think for some reason it hasn't caught up with what's printed in some of the online things someplace, but we can deal with that. Sarah, could you do me a favor? 'Cause I think you have the draft of what we discussed a little over a year ago. Could you just forward that? Could you forward that to the board?
Certainly.
Sometimes we can discuss it in the future.
I will do that.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. Update on the marijuana business, Cape Way Cannabis. So I know, Bob, this is something you had asked me to put on the agenda. So I actually spoke to the folks down at Cape Way Cannabis myself. I had been down there. Mr. LaFont, perhaps you can catch me up in the wording. They had something that was open to the house, open to the public, not an open
Yeah,
house.
it was a community outreach meeting, which is
Exactly.
required in the licensing process.
Right, so the last one that they had, I attended, someone may have attended after I left. When I was there, I was the only person there, but I did speak to them and got some information, so I did reach out to them. They're actually in the middle of doing some interior construction right now, but sometime after the first of the year, we are going to touch base again, and they're actually going to have the select board down there for a tour of the facility, and
Thank you. I
we'll go
appreciate
down
it.
through there, so that's where they're at right now. They are doing some interior construction, getting it ready to go, and like I said, we'll follow up after the first of the year
Thank you.
with them. So, we are now at the point where we have discussion and possible vote on finalizing the town administrator screening committee. But I know we reached out to the 3 members that were appointed by their respective committees, and we did tell them that there was an opportunity, if they wanted to address this board, that they could do that. That was at 7 o'clock. It's not 7 o'clock yet. So I'm a little reluctant to take this up now when someone may come in a little bit later and want to address the board.
Yeah, I agree.
So perhaps we could move on to the, if it was okay with the board, to skip over that to the approval of the Conservation, Community Preservation Act agreement. That okay with everybody? All right. All right. So, Mr. LaFawn, would you like to speak to this at all?
Sure. The basic, what's going on here is that last year at the town meeting, the Community Preservation Committee had recommended and the town voted for a particular project. And this was the Union Society, excuse me, And what came into play here is that the organization was incurring bills and giving those bills to the town. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. The way it works is that there's a grant given by the Community Preservation Committee, and then the organization that has that grant or the project, they perform the project or the expenditure, and that's the end of it. So what town council recommended is that we actually have an agreement with the third party who may be granted, who accepts a grant from the Community Preservation Committee, so that they know what the rules are, they know that what they're responsible for, and effectively puts the money in the hands of the organization, but they have to spend it in a way in accordance with the law. So it's really getting the town out of the expenditure of funds for a private organization. So this is what council has recommended.
And this was run by
Yes,
council?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Discussion from the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Community Preservation Act grant agreement from 2021.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think this is a great,
Yeah, this will be a
great way of doing it.
boilerplate from.
Yeah, I think everyone, all the Community Preservation Act should have to do something like this.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. Mr. LaFond, would you like to give us your town administrator update?
Sure, let me get caught up here a little bit. Well, 149 and 152 Plymouth Street, the ongoing saga. Route 149, I think you're aware that last time we discussed, there was a border survey that was recommended by council that was conducted, that was brought to town council, and town council now has gone to the court, and on December 29th, there is a hearing in housing court on this issue.
All right. Thank you.
And 152, there was a hearing this past week at the court, and the court has effectively, well, what the court did is the court ordered the applicant, the resident, to allow the town on the property within 7 days. It is a judge being lenient, which is generally the case. The first time you go in front of a judge, usually, you might get another 30 days or 60 days to be in compliance. So the goal is, the court is to allow the town to inspect it again within 7 days. If they're still in violation, well, then it goes back to the court, and the court will probably give some other deadline in order to be in compliance. And if that isn't reached, well, then you get into a contempt of court. So, as you know, it's a long process, but this is the first part of it is, getting on the property. Really, it's just the judge giving a little more time to be compliant.
It's a long process, but the process has to begin,
It
right?
is. That is exactly right. So, Route 44 project. I think we had a working group meeting today. The moving pieces are, number one, we've got the public safety piece, the fire piece, and that's kind of I don't want to call it a negotiation, but to some extent it is between the fire department and Hillwood. The fire department has a fire engineer who's kind of not the go-between, but providing advice to the chief. There's I don't want to say there's an agreement, but there's been a back and forth. Right now, the town, through the chief, is going back to Hillwood with some additional input. At some point in the next week or 2 weeks, hopefully, the changes will be hopefully agreed to for the most part, and then we'll be seeking language or a contract of sorts through town council. So that fair representation, Mr. Chairman?
I think it's a very fair representation,
Okay.
absolutely. Mr. Belden.
So I was watching the RDA meeting, what I do in my spare time, but it was really concerning when I started listening to some of the things about town meeting, the bylaw for town council, that just that be updated in that sense of where that bylaw is in the process with town council for being written and whatnot about increasing the height of that area. And
I forwarded to the chair of the RDA today the feedback from council on that that had been sent to our prior planner back sometime in September. So that is now in the hands of the RDA.
Okay.
So again, one of those things in transition kind of fell through a little bit, so.
Just to make sure that we all are
Yes.
on the same page, that we are working
Right.
in tandem with them to
Sure.
get this on the next town meeting. And
Yes, and the RDA, I don't want to get into any detail, but the RDA right now is dealing specifically with the public outreach piece, how they're going to, they've got a website, they're going to have some short videos set up, and I know Savory's here, I don't want to be beating a dead horse, but would you mind if Savory gets 3 minutes?
Absolutely not,
I know
Mr.
he did not intend to be, but.
Mr. Moore, would you like
I
to
just
join
can't-
us?
I'm sorry, Savory.
I just can't do a more eloquent job than Mr. Moore. So. Yes, you, and I saw you walk in, I said, okay, we're going to get him tonight, so,
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Hi, Savory.
sorry.
Just basically, the RDA has hired a consultant to help us with the community outreach for the annual town meeting initially, and that person is Stephen Cole, our former town planner. Actually, we didn't hire Stephen, we hired the Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation, of which Stephen is the principal. And we've been working with Stephen and a public relations gentleman who was hired by Hillwood to put together a community outreach program to tout the benefits that this is going to be for the town. The major part of this is going to be a website that is being developed right now by Paul Kelly, who does the website for the Friends of the Council on Aging and does other things within the town. So he's building the structure of the website for us. We're getting input from Hillwood for some questions that we don't have the answers to. We are getting some questions answered that we know the answer to based on the Urban Renewal Agreement and the MIPA study. And that's going to be part and parcel of the website. We're expecting to have the website go live sometime right before Christmas, hopefully 2 weeks from yesterday, the 20th, is our plan. And it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to have something out there that has, primarily we're looking at this as an FAQ area where people can go and not only read questions and their answers, but also have a chance to ask their own questions, which will be answered. So basically, that's where we're going now. We're planning on having a short little video to introduce the project on the webpage now. We're expecting to have another video ready probably towards the end of January that gets into a little bit more details, and that will precede the planning board public hearing on the article. So we want to have that kind of information out there, and then hopefully we'll be able to present a good article at town meeting and have the support of the town members for this. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what I was going to say, Savory, so, hey, thank you. So, okay. All right, so. And there's really nothing new on the, there's not something, the Montella interchange, there's things going on, okay? As you know, there's clearing, there's tree work. They're still waiting for supplies. They are trying to get some pipes in the ground before the ground freezes, but it's really nothing from other than you can physically see something now, there's really nothing new from the last time we discussed this, so.
Mr. Belton.
Yeah, Mr. LaFawn. 152 Plymouth Street.
Yes.
How is that?
He's already told us.
Yeah, that's the property that was in court last week, or the
Okay,
week
and
before.
149 is the,
The one that's
149
going
is-
to housing court.
Yes.
okay.
That's one on 1229.
That's the one with the dilapidated home.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's the
I just
one.
want to make sure.
Yeah,
I wasn't
okay.
too sure because it kind of
Yeah.
got molded together.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, the next town planner and town assessor, our new assessor started yesterday. He's not here tonight, but that has finally been filled. You know, like all these jobs today, we have a tough time getting qualified people, so we're fortunate we actually had a couple of people to choose from. A new gentleman here has his experience in the town of Dartmouth. I think he's going to be a really good fit, even though he's younger than most of us, so we won't hold that against him. So, but I know he's had the benefit of working with Ellen Blanchard. I think that's a luxury most people don't have coming into a position like this, and I know he's already worked with our finance director and meeting some of his peer group, too. So hopefully, he's off to a good start, and we'll be nice to him. So that's filled, thank goodness. The town planner position, we did have a candidate we were very close to hiring, and she decided that she was going to maintain her current position. So we are now in a situation where we're going to be going through a process again, and our goal is to get some short-term, part-time professional assistance for the planning board. We have reached out to Serpide, reached out to my peers in the region, and as well as the woman who decided not to be here full-time, so we're trying to get some assistance for the planning board for the short term. So that's recent, and it's ongoing right now. So 50%. Scenic roads. I had a conversation with the chairman and Sarah, and Sarah actually thought that she could provide some input.
Well, and just to
More than I
provide
can.
some background, this is something that Ms. Bogart had brought up at a meeting and asked us to look into, so I wanted to make sure that happened, so.
Well, and because it followed up on something the board dealt with earlier
Right.
this summer, too, on Indian Street, it didn't just come out of nowhere.
Sure, oh, absolutely, it is, wanted to provide some background on where it came from, that's all.
Right. So this is, I'm just going to read this. It looks longer than it is, but that's because the typeface is really big. This is from Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15C, entitled Scenic Road Designations, Improvements, and Fines. Upon recommendation or request of the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, or Historical Commission of any city or town, such city or town may designate any road in said city or town other than a numbered route or state highway as a scenic road. Provided, however, that a numbered route may be designated by a city or town as a scenic road if its entire length is contained within the boundaries of said city or town, and that no part of said route is owned or maintained by the Commonwealth. After a road has been designated as a scenic road, any repair, maintenance, or reconstruction, or paving work done with respect thereto shall not involve or include the cutting or removal of trees, or the tearing down or destruction of stone walls or portions thereof, except with the prior written consent of the planning board, or if there is no planning board, the selectmen of a town or the city council of a city, after a public hearing duly advertised twice in a newspaper of general circulation in the area, as to date, time, place, and purpose, the last publication to occur at least 7 days prior to such hearing. Provided, however, that when a public hearing must be held under the provisions of this section and under Section 3 of Chapter 87, prior to the cutting or removal of a tree, such hearings shall be consolidated into a single public hearing before the tree warden and the planning board, or the city, or the board, and if there is no planning board, and so on, the Board of Selectmen, City Council, and notice of such consolidated public hearing shall be given by the tree warden or his deputy as provided in said Section 3 of Chapter 87. Any city or town making scenic road designations shall make an ordinance or bylaw establishing that a violation of this paragraph shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $300. Designation of a road as a scenic road shall not affect the eligibility of a city or town to receive construction or reconstruction aid for such road pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 90. So basically, this allows, as it said, the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, or the Historical Commission to designate scenic roads, which was done in the last Open Space and Recreation Plan by the Conservation Commission when they accepted the plan, and it was accepted by the state. So we do have a list of those roads in that plan. But it looks like the thing that we have overlooked here is having that public hearing, and including our tree warden, who also happens to be our DPW superintendent. And that's probably nobody's fault. I don't think, anyone knew that had to take place. So now we know. We know that we can establish a fine for violation of this law of no more than $300. And we know that the DPW can accept Chapter 90 money to repair the roads.
I think what was missing, unless I missed it, was that it doesn't specifically say in a town who decides what a scenic road is, and I think,
It does.
does it say town
Upon
meeting?
recommendation or request of the planning board, first sentence, Conservation Commission or Historical Commission of any city or town, such city or town may designate any road in said city or town other than a numbered route or state highway as a
Right.
scenic road.
Sure, but it says said city or town. Well, but who makes the decision to designate it as a scenic road? I mean, anything, any board or committee, or the boards you mentioned, just because they want something to be a scenic road, it's got to be determined to be a scenic road by somebody has to make that designation, so.
So that's a good question.
It doesn't say the selectmen, it doesn't say, so again, my belief would be is that most like other, bylaws, that would be a vote of town meeting, but I think that's something we have to look into.
We have to look into
who
that.
the authority is, yeah.
Because the way it stands now, that open space and recreation plan was accepted by the Conservation Commission and then
In
by the
town
state.
meeting. Oh,
And then by the state.
I see, okay.
So
All right, so
that was my understanding of the process, but we should probably find out. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question.
That's the one piece.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Ms. Bogart, did you have
No,
anything?
thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
If a lot of the work was done with the plan and we missed the hearing, let's just get it all done. So, great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
And just briefly, I know there's I think Jen may have asked about, Eversource, the response to power outages. I don't have an update on that. I know that's something that our emergency management director deals with on an ongoing basis. So I haven't had a chance to speak to Tom about this. I know he's here tonight, but he's not here to speak about this, so I don't know if it's something that the board members want to speak to Tom personally about, or if you want to ask him at a future meeting to come in and have a conversation about it.
When I brought it up, it wasn't about restoring the power and getting it back on. It was about what can the town do to prevent it from going off in the first place. Because it's my understanding that our power comes from other towns. So it's a question
Okay.
for us and Eversource to have, what can we, the town, or Eversource, or collaboratively do to strengthen the grid in town? And that's not something I think
Okay.
is quick and easy conversation.
I
That's-
think I
Yeah.
misunderstood your point then.
Yeah, that's like a year's thing.
Sure.
Maybe they'd have to upgrade circuits or bring
Yeah.
in the DPU, but I know that we are getting our power from other towns, and we are helping other towns get power. So I think we owe it to ourselves to try to help ourselves more, and we need Eversource to do that. So that's a big thing. But I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to take care of our own. And I think a good step would be to ask them, how many, in just 2021, when the year's over, how many power outages were there in Carver? How long were they? And how many people were affected? And that would just kind of show where we're at and how things could get better. So, yeah, it's not just
Okay.
let's get it back on. It's,
Sure.
there's got to be stuff we can do to make it not go off in the first place.
And if I may, there's also a bylaw that town council suggested we could write, which would take years to implement, to put all the power lines underground. Now, I don't know who pays for that, though.
Yeah.
That's the question.
That's an excellent question.
Jim,
Mr. Belvin?
kind of tagging along there, maybe that's something that we should call Eversource and have them come in here and sit down with us to see what do they have for plans for the future, and starting in January or whatnot, have them come in and say, hey, what can you guys do? I mean, we have a huge transfer station up here,
Yeah.
and I mean, we can't keep our residents keep going out of power for days and days and days on end, and I understand storms happen, but, I mean, there's got to be other alternatives.
See, I can't guarantee that'll be
I know.
January, but we'll keep it on the list. Mr. LaFond, I think you have,
Yeah, I actually have a little written statement, but it could take more than 5 minutes, so I'm happy to.
would you like to revert to the 7 o'clock agenda item and keep your statement for later, or would you like to make it now?
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll leave it to your
Well, I
discretion,
guess
Mr.
I'll-
LaFond.
I guess I'll read it now.
Okay.
Little sentimental, bit. Okay, here's my statement. Okay. I was a little hesitant to make any final comments regarding my tenure in Carver as town administrator and interim town administrator. but a trusted person suggested to me that after over 18 years serving the town, that I have earned the credibility to do so. So I wish to state that serving the town of Carver has been the highlight of my career. Well beyond my service being called a career, it has been a place where in many ways my family has grown up. I think I mentioned this during my interview. To that extent, it's gratifying that my efforts were important to the construction of this building, the library, and the former playground. Not to get into that, sorry. My kids would do the circuit at least once a week before going to Plain Jane's for lunch, and this was a way of life for many years. I believe that Carver remains a wonderful town for families and for raising children. And I don't like to use the word I or my. I am a we person, even if I is the correct description in many ways. So I will resist the use of I as much as possible versus we. I've actually been accused by some of not using I enough and taking credit for positive things that have been accomplished. But as you know, that is not my style. I was incredibly fortunate to have worked with some of the finest, selfless members of boards and committees that anyone in my position throughout the state would consider to be a blessing. And I will come back to that later. I do feel that it is appropriate to mention several of those things that we have accomplished in my tenure as interim over the past 18 months. Excuse me. I came into this position during the early days of the pandemic. None of us knew the public health, financial, staffing implications that were ahead. Furloughed employees were brought back in an orderly manner. We were able to overcome the immediate financial challenges presented by our imminent annual town meeting. Yet we completed a budget process that allowed the town to operate effectively July 1. As it happens, the net impact on local aid was fairly minimal at about $80,000. The most significant concern was overestimation of local receipts in excess of $600,000. Combined, this was a major challenge for me walking in the door. And in consultation and cooperation with the Finance Committee, we survived that challenge and were able to restore our reserves at the very next town meeting, which I think is extraordinary. Further, we were able to prepare and recommend a balanced budget for the current fiscal year that did not include any reduction in services or staffing. Throughout this time, Carver was one of the very few towns in the region to keep our town hall open to the public, offering full service. While some have been critical of my administration of the CARES Act funding, be aware that I am requesting every dime allocated for Carver for mitigation of the impacts of the pandemic. The program is specifically designed to mitigate financial impact through December 31st, 2021. I have been very deliberate in determining those programs and purchases that are in the best interest of the town and pose a minimal possibility of being rejected in whole or in part. The success in doing so speaks for itself and even include a number of capital needs that eventually had to be addressed. Within the prescribed time frame, I will have applied for every dollar, with a small buffer to ensure that we recover all funds earmarked for Carver. And I do think Tom O'Brien, our county treasurer, should be recognized for his guidance through this process. We have also made strides with regard to enhancing the town's financial administration, moving staff around to better serve each function, and beginning to provide education to current employees will enhance staffing and understanding of our staff over the entire financial operation, and how each discipline impacts the whole. This will be of great service to the town for years to come. We redirected funds to hire a full-time COA director at essentially zero net cost. Although there is much work to do, this is a step in the right direction in providing service to our seniors. The effort to enhance the atmosphere of the building at the Atwood House and forward the capital and infrastructure needs are being pursued and researched by COA Director Connie Kelly in consultation with the O&M. So I think, she's working very diligently. We absorbed the personnel costs of the Recreation Department into the town budget rather than hoping that town meeting would see fit every year to appropriate funds from free cash. That's no way to run a department that brings so much value to the town. Hopefully in FY 2023, we'll absorb the department's expenses in the town, which I had committed to do for the coming fiscal year. And recreation they're part of the town too. I don't know why it has developed that way. We were able to negotiate 3 collective bargaining agreements even during this time of fiscal uncertainty. And my thanks and appreciation to the members of the Public Works Department, Dispatch, and Police units for their cooperation and understanding. We purchased the land abutting the COA on Lakeview Street. This is one of those generational successes that the town will reap the benefits of in perpetuity, well beyond the time when anyone remembers our names. My efforts in saving the Gateway Health Group from likely becoming defunct by 2024 will result in countless savings for the foreseeable future to help fund our public safety and other staffing needs. Not only was this group saved from dissolution, but we're in a strong position to actually grow the group substantially to provide stable, cost-effective plan design into the future. Preserving this group strengthens our ability to adapt to the ever-changing challenges and opportunities presented in the future. Upon beginning my current tenure, I was immediately and unsolicited, this is when you don't leave the room, chairman of the group. Unfortunately, the leadership of each and every one of our partners is new, and my history with this group has been critical in our success. In fact, our negative rating increase, can't have a negative rating increase, a negative rating for the current fiscal year, which was -2, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, allowing us to meet our challenges. This all may be out of the public eye, but the fiscal impact on Carver over these many years and into the future are significant. We aggressively pursued the requirements stipulated in the administrative consent order with DEP for the installation of the water line extension on Plymouth Street. Our diligence in moving the procurement and contracting process forward in an expedited manner, thank you, Elaine, was, and I give credit, obviously, to Kevin Forg, who has overseen this, boots on the ground from day one and into the future, as well as a lot of interaction with the public. I think we all know, too, well in advance of the, in addition to the minimal requirements of DEP, we identified and appropriated sufficient funds to go beyond that to make sure we could bring service to each and every home, which, even though it wasn't necessary, I think we all agree was the right thing to do. We've begun the effort to improve the capability and the performance of our land use department. We hired a desperately needed full-time building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer, which is a critical component in dealing with zoning violations, citizen complaints, and helping both residents and contractors comply with the rules that the citizens have determined to be important. The position is also indispensable in the coordination of inspection efforts of all of our land use and public safety departments, and this function should never have lapsed. When I prepared this statement, I was on the precipice of hiring a new town planner. For various reasons, this has not been accomplished, but we continue to pursue this matter. Hopefully, an effective short-term solution can be implemented. We can't say that we're committed to land use planning consistent with our master plan without putting the resources in place to achieve that. These matters don't take care of themselves. Quality people working diligently to forward the goals of the town is what's necessary. Coordination between the various boards and departments and planning and negotiating with the developer of the Route 44 project has been a testament to the leadership of this board and the leadership of our department heads. The knowledge and dedication of the membership of Carver's Redevelopment Authority should give great comfort to the citizens of Carver that every effort will be made to solve the challenge presented by the brownfield site in North Carver. Something is ultimately going to be developed at that site. The commitment to doing so in such a way that makes every effort to preserve the character of Carver is paramount in the minds of all of the above. A huge milestone for the town was the conclusion of the recent collective bargaining agreement with our police union that will culminate in the town's departure from the civil service system. The town's ability to meet our staffing challenges over the next 5 years simply could not have been achieved without doing so. Previous attempts to accomplish this over the past dozen years have not been successful. And without the mutual trust between me, the chief, and the union, and the police leadership, this simply would not have been possible. Keep in mind, this has all been accomplished in 18 months. In addition, I think it's my obligation to point out certain challenges and opportunities ahead. Facilitating the technological and other infrastructure needs at the Atwood House is critical to serving the needs of our seniors, as well as any expanded or future use of the building. and I think the ARPA funds would perfectly meet this goal. I think it falls within, certainly within the span of that. Expanding the IT resources for town departments is becoming more of a priority as we try to meet the rapidly changing technological requirements necessary to any organization of our size. Conveying the town's wells that serve Cranberry Village. This should be pursued at the 2022 annual town meeting, and I do have a reminder in our file to have an article to do that. Pursuing a pilot with the developer of the Cranberry Point Energy Storage Facility. This has an opportunity to bring significant revenue to the town with little or no service demand. Completing and pursuing recommendations of the zoning bylaw review consistent with the town's master plan. It's been a long time since the thorough review has been conducted, and it's long overdue. Making every effort we possibly can to help preserve our farming community. I believe that this is the number one factor in maintaining the quality of life and the character of the town. Proactively and aggressively educating citizens as to the critical nature of the above and the components necessary to that cause is critical, and it's something we should be doing. As time passes, I believe that the appreciation for the farming community in preserving open space, controlling growth, and stemming the needs for local services that outpace our financial ability to meet those needs may be waning. It is dangerous to do so, but I'm indeed going to name names. I'm sure that I am forgetting or overlooking some, but it's a risk I am willing to take. I restrict this list to the elected members of the Select Board that I was blessed to serve with over many years. While there is always disagreement on decisions, policy direction, etc., I believe that the following individuals represent the best and selfless public service and are responsible for much of the progress that has been made in the past 30-plus years. Reverend Bob Merritt and Dick Ward have been and remain, in my opinion, the finest and most inspirational people to hold the position of selectman, select board in any town throughout Massachusetts and beyond. Their grace, credibility, statesmanship, and humor have always been a calming influence when the town was in such need. I'm sure that Bob's wife Peg and Dick's wife Judy have some influence here. Frank Casey brought a very subdued yet strategic approach to the position of selectman. Frank was generally a couple steps ahead of everyone else in his approach to making and setting the table for the dominoes to fall just the right way. And I remember Frank would let us in sometimes on what his thought process was, and it generally worked out that way. And he did it in a soothing, gentlemanly manner that inspired confidence in our government. Frank's service to our country during a time of conflict and upheaval perhaps influenced his outlook and approach to governing. And, as we all know, his wife Mary Ellen, in her own way, continues to be an asset to our town. Recently deceased Jack Angley was always diligent in pursuing those things that he believed in, at times to his own detriment, like that time he took on civil service, the town meeting floor. I think we remember that. In his other lives, he was a grower and an entertainer. He brought this entertainment to the board as he pursued those matters and issues that he believed were right. And Jack and his recently deceased wife are sorely missed, and I suggest that, and I think Jack would agree, that Dot's probably a lot missed more than he is. So. And Bernadette Hemingway, who served as town clerk, as well as a member of the Board of Selectmen, she was a true lady and was helpful in influencing the comportment of those who came before the board during some rather contentious times, and I think we probably pretty much know what those times were. In her own way, she left a mark on this town as a person who cared deeply for the public as well as the employees. And I had never met her husband, Larry, who predeceased her prior to my initial tenure, but I'm sure he was a lucky man. I also include recent Select Board member Ron Clark. Ron served for 15 years on the board and was instrumental in the establishment of the position of town administrator through the Special Act in 1994. His commitment to a more professional form of government has reaped tremendous benefit that speaks for itself. Ron was also a leader in repairing the damaged relationship between the town and the school department early in his tenure. And perhaps with an occasional hiccup or two over the years, this effort reaps its benefit to this very day and has been the envy of many of my peers for a long time. And we all know that Ron's wife, Sharon, continues her service to the town as a member of the ZBA and the RDA, and anything else we can, reel her in for. Finally, Sarah Hewins has been an outspoken, passionate, and strong leader for all of those matters she believes to be important. I remember well her courage in standing up on behalf of the town and protection of the town's natural resources that helped make Carver what it is today, and she did so willingly to her own detriment. And of course, her husband, Steve Dewhurst, has contributed in his own way, service on boards and committees, and has remained a resource for me at times. What all of the above have in common is that they cared about the town, the citizens, and employees. They cared about and honored the position as elected leaders of the town. They valued debate and difference of opinion. They put the needs of the towns ahead of themselves. They cared about me, each other, and our families. In my previous tenure, there was a commitment to decorum and statesmanship that seems to be diminishing throughout local government, statewide, I think all over the country. They appreciated that a chief elected officer of the town, as chief elected officers of the town, they were responsible for setting a tone, an atmosphere, and stability that was felt by employees and public alike. From my experience, this responsibility impacts the performance of local government. One of the principles that I have espoused for very many years is when people turn off their televisions after watching a meeting of the Select Board, do they feel good about their government? Are they confident in the town's leadership? Is this a positive, inviting organization in which they wish to participate? And I can't answer that question for the citizens of Carver. They will have to make their own decision. But I do caution that the answer to that question has lasting impact on the town. So, thank you all for your time, and a little preachy at times, but well worth it. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. LaFond. And
Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for all you've done
Thank
for the
you.
town, and my chance to work with you over these last several months as chair. I appreciate
No, thank you.
your guidance and leadership.
Sure.
So, anyone else?
Thank you very much for serving our town for these
That's
many months, and
Been a pleasure. Yep.
good luck on your future
Years, many years. Yeah.
Well,
Right. Thank you.
in my term.
I didn't know that today was the goodbye. I thought we had one more meeting.
Well,
too.
I know how things go when you get into a Christmas-type schedule, so I said, I'm not going to miss my opportunity.
Okay.
And we do have one more meeting, so Ms. Ewens.
Thank you, Mr. LaFond, for being here all these years.
All right, moving on. We'll move back to our 7 o'clock agenda item, discussion and possible vote on finalizing the Town Administrative Screening Committee, including consideration of representatives selected by the Planning Board, School Committee, and Finance Committee. And Ms. Weston, correct me if I'm wrong, those representatives are Bruce Mackey from the Planning Board, Jen Pratt from the School Committee, and Alan Germain from the Finance Committee, correct? Right. All right. I would make a motion that we appoint those three representatives to the Town Administrative Screening Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? I guess prior to discussion, let me ask, are there any members from those three committees, Mr. Mackey, Ms. Pratt, or Mr. Germain? Mr. Germain, would you like to address the committee?
As soon as Bob's done.
Who made the motion?
I think it's appropriate. I think you should go
I'd like
first.
to know what he's going to say first, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Germain, I think you should address the committee before we begin our deliberations.
I'd like to know what Mr. Belvin is going to speak of so that I'll know how to respond.
This is not.
Do that after the fact.
This is not going to be a back and forth, Mr. Germain. We'd like to offer you the opportunity to speak to the committee. Would you like to speak to the committee?
I want to reserve the right to respond.
This is not a deliberation. We're going to deliberate as a board. We'd like to give you the opportunity to address the committee. Would you like to address the committee?
I guess I have no choice,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'd like this added into the record for the minutes. You all have a copy, I assume?
We believe we do.
Do you like my copy, to be sure?
No, I think you're talking about the emails, right?
I'm talking
Emails,
about the
correct?
emails.
All right. Mr. Dame, I'd ask you, while I won't limit you to time, I would ask you to please try to keep as close to 3 or 4 minutes as possible.
Well, we all know exactly what is about to be said. So why don't we just get this over with?
Mr. Jermaine, please.
There's a challenge to my being the FinCom representative by Bob Belbin, Jen Bogart, and unfortunately, Mr. Hoffman, who's not here. So that challenge is based on whatever it's based on. But the fact of the matter is very simple. The charge of the Select Board was a representative from the school committee, the planning board, and the finance committee to be chosen by their respective committees. We followed what you asked. You don't like the end result, for whatever your personal reasons are. That's fine, but you don't have the choice, because you cannot meddle or interfere, which is exactly what you did, Mr. Belvin, and that's why these emails are being attached. You tried to tamper with an autonomous committee, requesting that they come back in session, revote, because you don't like me. That's fine. You have that opinion. You cannot tamper with a committee. So do whatever it is you need to do tonight. It's up to you. But you cannot tamper with the vote of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Jermaine. Discussion.
Thank you. So, to make it perfectly clear, I did. As a Board of Selectmen member, just one member, me, for information that I have and my knowledge, I felt that the Board of the Finance Committee should pick somebody else to represent them between the Town Administrator Screening Committee. I still feel that way, that he's not a good representative. And further solidified my my decision right now is what happened at the Conservation Commission meeting at the last one.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
There is
Mr.
an email in your possession that's been distributed to this entire board. It was a dispute between me and the Conservation Commission. That has been corrected. Savory Moore and I have discussed it. I'm still a member of the Conservation Commission in good standing as vice chair.
Are we referring to...
It's actually irrelevant to this conversation.
It's completely irrelevant. That's right. Mr. Belvin, please continue. We're addressing, what we're addressing here is the appointment of Bruce Mackey, Jen Pratt, and Alan Germain to the Town Administrator Screening Committee. So please keep, all of us, keep all your remarks pointed at the Town Administrator Screening Committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Belvin.
Because Mr. Jermaine actually entered this into the record, and we all have a copy of this here, okay? Again, my email was clear. This is just my decision. It's not meddling into the Finance Committee, okay? It's one person's opinion that was given to the committee so they could turn around and think about it. The other emails that came in here, all right, from the other members, all support Mr. Jermaine, which that's fine. But I still have the right to my division, okay, and my opinion, okay? So I want to make it clear that I think that I'm not in favor of Mr. Jermaine. The other two I'm fine with, Mr. Jermaine picking who our next town administrator, okay, and based on the information that I have. So it's not that I don't like you, Alan, okay? Like we've always talked before, is that we agree on a lot of things, okay?
Don't waste your breath, Bob.
And that's fine, and that's fine.
All right, folks.
But I just want to make it clear is that it's my decision. It's my decision, all right, in my opinion, that we not have Mr. Jermaine serve as the Finance Committee member for the Screening Committee. And I, again, request that they pick somebody else.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Ewens.
If I may, I would never, in 100 years, take it on myself to tell another town board or commission what to do and how to conduct themselves. I think, given the emails that we have, it's pretty clear the other members of the Finance Committee felt the same way. We voted, we gave our charge to the Screening Committee to have a member from each of those committees. This is who they picked. I really don't think we can sit here and say, well, nope, sorry, we don't like that. That's not up to us. We asked them who they wanted, and they told us who they picked.
I feel the need to point out a few things here. Number one, this board, not once, but twice, put together a town administrator screening committee, and both times unanimously voted to ask the Finance Committee to recommend a representative to this committee. Twice we did that. Twice the vote was unanimous. The board didn't have to do that. If the board had felt uncomfortable, we did this just in the first meeting in November. If the board didn't want the Finance Committee to have a representative, to appoint a representative to this board, they could have changed that. They could have turned it into an at-large representative, any number of things. This board didn't choose to do that. They chose to ask the Finance Committee to appoint somebody. Now, I believe that the Finance Committee held a special meeting just to appoint that person. Am I correct, Mr. Germain?
Yeah, it was a Zoom meeting.
We actually did it twice.
Thank you. And I also believe that at that meeting, the vote was unanimous to vote for Mr. Germain. Am I correct?
It was unanimous on those voting. There was one abstention.
And am I correct, it was unanimous both times? Because you were the previous representative as well.
All 3 times, to be exact.
Thank you. So regardless of what this board feels, and I don't want to get into personalities here, but we asked the Finance Committee to send us a representative. We didn't have to do that. We could have turned that representative on the Screening Committee into an at-large representative, asked another board, any of those things, but we didn't do that. We asked the Finance Committee to send us a representative. They held a special meeting to send us a representative. They voted unanimously to ask Mr. Germain to be on the committee. He served as the vice chairman of the committee the last time we did this. So I really think it's completely wrong for this board to say to the Finance Committee, sorry, we know you unanimously supported Mr. Germain, but we don't feel comfortable with that. I think it's totally wrong of this board, no matter what individuals think. I think we have to respect what we asked the Finance Committee to do. They did what we asked them to do. They did it unanimously, and I think it's wrong for us to interfere in that vote. So I have to make sure that's on the record.
And I also want to add, if I may, that I think it's extremely important to have a member of the Finance Committee. I mean, we were discussing the town administrator's bylaw previously, and I just think it doesn't make any sense not to have the Finance Committee member on the Screening Committee, because, as I said, they are the ones who work the closest with the town administrator on the budget. And this is not a small budget. We're talking a $42 million budget. So, I mean, this is a serious matter. So to exclude them for whatever reason, you know, I don't personally care who they pick. They pick the person. That's it, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Is there any further discussion on this?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Germain. Is this new information for the board?
Yes, it is. May 18, 2021 meeting minutes from the Select Board. You bear with me for 1/2 second. I have a copy of it. There was a vote, Town Administrator Screening Committee. Just to show a little bit, here it is. I got it. Makeup of the Screening Committee. Motion by Belvin to appoint the following as the makeup of the Screening Committee, to include 1 current member of the Finance Committee, 1 current member of the School Committee, 1 current member of the Planning Board, 3 at-large members, and 1 member from the business community. The aforementioned committees or boards are to designate their appointee at a meeting to be held prior to the 6/1/21 Select Board meeting, and if the committee fails to appoint a member, the Select Board will then appoint the member in their place. Seconded by Hoffman. The vote was 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Germain.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Belvin.
I didn't say that the Finance Committee can't have someone. I just, like I said, I can't support Mr. Germain to be on that committee.
Well, I don't think it's up to us whether we support him or not. The Finance Committee has already nominated him.
We have a motion and a second to appoint those three. Okay? And if he's one of them, then I have to vote against all of them, even though I agree with the other two.
He is certainly one of them. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. The motion fails 2-2. Okay, I would make a motion to appoint Bruce Mackey as the Planning Board Representative to the Town Administrative Screening Committee.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. I would make a motion to appoint Jen Pratt as the School Committee appointee to the Town Administrative Screening Committee.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. I would make a motion to appoint Alan Germain as the Finance Committee appointee to the Town Administrative Screening Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion fails. Okay.
Well, what do we do now?
Well, we-
It's who the Finance Committee recommended.
it is. And this board has failed to appoint that person. I would think at this point, we will put this on our next meeting agenda when we
Point
have...
of information, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think the only option at this point is to remove the Finance Committee from the task. So the FinCom will have no representation to it at all, in which case there will be fallout, but the board likes to have fallout.
I don't feel comfortable...
Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Please.
Mr. Bell.
That's something that I think the Finance Committee needs to address as a Finance Committee, not just the
FinCom will never take
chairperson.
this topic up again.
Okay.
We're done.
Okay, I think it's unfortunate that tonight we don't have a full board. Okay, I think obviously this is something we need a full board for. So,
It wouldn't have changed the outcome.
well,
So the fact is that the FinCom, for the board's own reference, FinCom and me as chairman, for the moment, this will never see an agenda, this will never see a meeting
all right.
minute, this will never see another meeting.
All right.
We will not take this matter back up. So you guys do whatever it is you think is best.
All right.
FinCom deals with the town administrator
Chairman,
more than
he's-
any other board committee or-
Mr. Germain, I appreciate your comments, okay? Unfortunately, we have a 2-2 motion, so
Okay.
we will,
So we're done. Have a nice night.
moving
I'll
forward.
go home and be very proud of yourselves, especially you, Mr. Bell.
Moving forward, minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair, 48 hours in advance of the meeting. There are none. Our next meeting, on the agenda, we have posted 12/21/21, but Ms. Weston, we have interim town administrator interviews scheduled for the 15th?
The 15th.
15th, thank you. At what time? Right now, what time is our first?
Beginning at 10 a.m.
Okay.
and then all day.
Thank you. All right, let's see. We have a number of minutes here, so let's see. Approval and not for release of the executive session minutes of 11/16/21. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the amendments.
Approve and not for release, correct?
Right, and not for release.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Approval of the minutes of 11/16/21.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? I'll second it.
I just want to make sure, I had emailed Elaine a couple changes earlier today, so it was in an email this afternoon.
I did see those changes.
Okay.
Did
One
it-
was just, the date 2021 should be 2022, and then there was just a couple additions on page 5. I don't have my exact wording.
I saw them all,
I've
and
got them.
I had no, does anyone have?
I have them here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Select Board community announcements. Ms. Bogart.
Well, I'd like to say, I think the town is really kind of pretty and spirited, because I'm seeing so many Christmas lights and holiday displays around that I can't help but smile. Driving around, I love seeing it everywhere. Just on my way here, there was a car on Lakeview outlined with lights, and I just think it's beautiful, and I think it's putting a smile on my face and other people's faces, so thank you to everyone who is taking the time to put out any decorations and displays, because it's what the world needs now. A Christmas light just makes you smile, at least me.
Mr. Bell.
I'm good, thanks.
Ms. Hewens.
I have nothing right now, thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have absolutely nothing as well, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you.